Jack and the Beanstalk, Part 2. In the previous lesson, you may have made predictions about what would happen next. Listen carefully to find out whether or not your predictions are correct. If you are already familiar with this fairy tale, listen to see how this version might be different from the one you know. "Goodness gracious, it's my husband," said the giant's wife. "What on earth shall I do? Quick, jump in here!" And Jack jumped into the oven just as the giant came in. He was a big one, to be sure. He had 3 cows tied to his belt. He threw them down on the table and said rudely to his wife, or he said without politeness or respect, "Here, wife, cook me a couple of these for breakfast. But wait, what's this I smell? Fee, fi, fo, fam, I smell the blood of an Englishman." "Now, dear," said his wife, "it's nothing but the leftover smell of that little boy you had for dinner yesterday. Go along and wash up, and by the time you come back, I'll have breakfast ready." So the giant went off, and Jack was about to jump out of the oven when the woman whispered, "Wait till he's asleep. He always has a nap after breakfast." The giant gulped down his breakfast. He swallowed his breakfast quickly, in big bites. Then he went to a giant chest and took out 2 big bags. He sat down, and from the bags he took out piles of gold coins. He began counting them very slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then his head began to nod, and soon he began to snore, so that the whole house shook. Jack crept out of the oven, tiptoed past the giant, grabbed one of the bags of gold, which he could barely lift, and ran lickety-split back to the beanstalk. Do you think lickety-split means very quickly or very slowly? He threw down the bag of gold, which fell, kerplunk, into his mother's garden, then climbed down until at last he reached the ground. "Well, Mother," he said, "wasn't I right about the beans? They really are magic." How do you think Jack's mother responded to Jack? For a while, Jack and his mother bought what they needed, and a little more, with the bag of gold. But at last the bag was empty, so Jack made up his mind to try his luck again at the top of the beanstalk. He climbed, and he climbed, and he climbed, and once again, sure enough, there was the great, tall woman standing on the doorstep of her house, and once again he asked for something to eat. "Go away, boy," said the woman, "or else my husband will eat you up for breakfast. But say, aren't you the youngster who came here once before? Do you know, on that very day my husband lost one of his bags of gold?" "Did he now?" said Jack. "How very strange. Maybe I could help you find it, but I'm so hungry that first I must have something to eat." So the great, tall woman gave him something to eat, but he had hardly taken a bite when, thump, 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 they heard the giant's footsteps. Once again, the wife hid Jack in the oven. It all happened as it had before. In came the giant, bellowing, or shouting in a loud, powerful voice, "Fee, fi, fo, fam." Then, after gulping down 3 broiled oxen for breakfast, the giant said, "Wife, bring me my hen and my golden harp." The wife brought them. The giant looked at the hen and barked, or said loudly, "Lay!" and the hen laid an egg, all of gold. Then the giant looked at the golden harp and said, "Sing!" and the golden harp sang beautifully, and it went on singing until the giant fell asleep and started snoring like thunder. Jack sneaked out of the oven and crept like a mouse on his hands and knees. Then he crawled up the table, grabbed the hen and golden harp, and dashed toward the door. He sneaked, crept, and crawled. Remember these words from Lesson 7? But the hen began to cluck, and the harp called out, "Master! Master!" the giant woke up just in time to see Jack running away with his treasures. Jack ran as fast as he could, and the giant came bounding after him, or leaping forward, and would have caught him, only Jack had a head start. When Jack got to the beanstalk, he climbed down as fast as he could. The giant reached the beanstalk and stopped short. He didn't like the idea of climbing down such a ladder. But, like it or not, the giant swung himself down onto the beanstalk, which shook with his weight. By this time, Jack had climbed down and reached home. "Mother!" he cried. "Give me an axe, and hurry!" His mother came rushing out with an axe in her hand. She ran with Jack to the beanstalk, and then she screamed with fright as she saw the giant making his way down. Jack swung the axe and gave a chop at the beanstalk. The giant felt the beanstalk shake, and he stopped to see what was the matter. Jack gave another chop, and another, and another, and the beanstalk began to topple over. Then the giant fell down and broke his crown, and the beanstalk came tumbling after. Does this line remind you of a nursery rhyme where someone fell down and broke his crown and someone else came tumbling after? From then on, Jack and his mother had all the money and music they wanted, for the hen gave them golden eggs, and the harp sang for them all day long, and they lived happily ever after. In the previous read-aloud, you predicted what would happen in the second half of this story. Were your predictions correct? How were your predictions different from what really happened? What does the giant's wife tell Jack to do in the beginning of this part of the fairy tale when the rude giant comes into the house to gulp down his breakfast? Why does she have him do this? What is the first treasure Jack takes from the giant? Why does Jack go back up the beanstalk a second time, even after hearing the giant's bellowing voice? How does the giant's wife treat Jack the second time? Does she recognize Jack from before? What treasures does Jack take from the giant this time? What happens when Jack tries to escape with the hen and the harp? In the first half of the fairy tale, Jack and his mother had a problem when their cow stopped giving milk and they had no other way to eat. How was this problem solved? What new problems does Jack encounter in this second half of the fairy tale? How were these problems solved? What parts of this fairy tale are fantasy? Do you think it is right for Jack to take the coins, hen, and harp from the giant? Why or why not? In the read-aloud you heard, "He threw them down on the table and said rudely to his wife, 'Here, wife, cook me a couple of these for breakfast.' Say the word rudely with me. Rudely. To act rudely means you're doing something in a way that hurts others or is not polite. The boys rudely cut to the front of the lunch line. What else does the giant do rudely in this fairy tale? Try to use the word rudely when you tell about it. What's the word we've been talking about? The opposite of rudely is politely, which means with good manners and respect. In the previous read-aloud, you heard, "Good morning, ma'am," said Jack, quite politely. I'm going to describe a few situations. If what I say is an example of someone acting rudely, then say, "They are acting rudely." If I give an example of someone acting politely, say, "They are acting politely." The boys are helping pick up apples that fell out of the bag. The girl was yelling at her brother for spilling his milk. The boy slammed his door shut before his little sister could come into his room. The man started talking when someone else was already talking. The children remembered to say please and thank you.